What happens when we die? It's the question that's haunted humanity since we first gathered around flickering campfires, gazed up at the stars and wondered about the void beyond. Is it just a final blackout, a curtain dropping on the stage of life? Or is there a journey waiting, a path, a process, maybe even a choice that shapes what comes next? For centuries we've sought answers in religion, philosophy, and science, but no one's come back with a clear, no-nonsense explanation, or have they? There's an ancient text, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that claims to lay out exactly what happens when your heart stops beating. This isn't some New Age fluff or a Hollywood ghost story. It's a 1,200-year-old guide for the soul, born in the rugged mountains of Tibet, rooted in the raw, unfiltered wisdom of Buddhist philosophy. Today, in 2025, we're diving deep into this mysterious book, stripping away the dogma, cutting through the noise, and getting to the truth as we understand it. Over the next 50 minutes, we'll explore where this book came from, what it says about the afterlife, how modern science weighs in, stories from people who've brushed with death, why skeptics call it nonsense, how its ideas are shaping our tech-driven world, and, most importantly, what it means for how you live right now. So, grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. No BS, just the truth as we see it. Let's set the stage. Death isn't just a single moment, it's a transition, a shift from one state of being to another, as much about your mind as your body. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodol in Tibetan, is like a cosmic instruction manual for that transition. Written in the 8th century, it's not a book you'd pick up for a casual read by the fireplace. It's traditionally read aloud to someone who's dying or recently deceased, guiding their consciousness through the chaos of what comes next. The title Bardo Thodol translates to liberation through hearing in the intermediate state. That's a mouthful, I know, but it's really about helping your soul navigate a liminal space called the Bardo, a dreamlike realm between death and rebirth where your mind faces visions, challenges, and choices. This isn't about heaven, hell, or fluffy angels with harps. It's about confronting your own consciousness when the stakes are at their highest, with the potential to shape your next life or even break free from the cycle of rebirth altogether. Our journey today will be thorough and unflinching. We'll start by exploring the book's origins in ancient Tibet, diving into the world of monasteries, monks, and a legendary figure who shaped its teachings. Then we'll walk through the Bardo itself, step by step, unpacking what the book says happens after you die. The vivid visions, the cosmic choices, the mental tests. We'll put those claims under the microscope of modern science, looking at near-death experiences, brain chemistry, and even quantum theories, to see if they hold up. We'll hear from 6 real people, ordinary folks, not mystics, who have come close to death and whose stories echo the book's teachings in surprising ways. We'll tackle the skeptics head-on, asking if this is all just ancient mythology or if it has real psychological value. We'll see how the book's ideas are alive in 2025, from mindfulness apps to virtual reality to pop culture. And finally, we'll distill practical takeaways you can use today, whether you believe in an afterlife or just want to live with more clarity and courage. This isn't about preaching or pushing beliefs, it's about exploring a profound mystery with an open mind and a no-nonsense attitude. Let's begin where it all started, in the heart of ancient Tibet. Picture the 8th century, high in the Himalayas. Snow blankets towering peaks, monasteries cling to rocky cliffs, and prayer flags flutter in the icy wind, carrying whispered blessings across the valleys. The air is thin, the silence profound, broken only by the low chants of monks greeting the dawn. This is where the Tibetan Book of the Dead was born, attributed to a Buddhist master named Padmasambhava. In Tibetan Buddhism, he's a towering figure, often called the second Buddha for bringing Buddhism to Tibet's wild frontier. He wasn't some ivory tower scholar. Padmasambhava was a practical, almost rebellious teacher, determined to make spiritual wisdom accessible to everyone, not just monks or mystics. His mission was bold, to prepare people for death, the ultimate unknown, when fear and confusion could overwhelm even the strongest minds. The Bardo Thodol was his masterpiece, a spiritual manual meant to be read aloud, guiding the dying or deceased through the afterlife with clear, practical instructions. Padmasambhava's Tibet was a place of harsh beauty and spiritual intensity. Buddhism was still new, clashing with local traditions, and death was ever present. Disease, cold, and conflict made life fragile. The Tibetan Book of the Dead wasn't written for academic debates. It was for real people facing real endings. Farmers, traders, parents, anyone staring down mortality. The book's purpose was to act as a lifeline, a voice of calm in the storm of death. It's traditionally read by a monk or loved one, sometimes over days, to help the deceased's consciousness stay focused as it leaves the body. The text is dense with Buddhist philosophy, but its core is simple. Death is a journey, and your mind is the key to navigating it. Padmasambhava believed that consciousness doesn't vanish when you die. It enters the Bardo, a liminal state where your thoughts, fears, and desires take on vivid forms, shaping what comes next. Let's unpack the Bardo itself. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Bardo is the in-between state, a kind of mental wilderness between death and rebirth. It's not a physical place like a city or a forest. It's a state of consciousness, a dreamlike realm where your mind projects its own reality. The Tibetan Book of the Dead divides this journey into 3 main stages, each with its own challenges and opportunities. The Chikabardo is the moment of death itself, a fleeting chance for liberation. The Chonyadbardo is where you face vivid visions of deities, peaceful and wrathful, that test your mental clarity. The Sidpardo is where you're pulled toward rebirth, guided by your karma. The book's central message is to stay awake, stay calm, and recognize that everything you see is a projection of your own mind. It's like being thrown into a lucid dream where every choice matters. Get it right, and you could achieve enlightenment. Get it wrong, and you're back in the cycle of life and death. Let's dive into these stages one by one, starting with the moment you die. The Chikabardo begins the second your heart stops. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this as a critical window, a moment when your consciousness breaks free from your body and encounters the clear light of reality. Picture a blinding white light, pure and overwhelming, like the essence of existence itself. This light isn't just bright, it's the ultimate truth, what Buddhists call the nature of reality, free from illusion. The book says if you can embrace this light, fully surrender to it, you achieve enlightenment, dissolving into the universe and breaking free from the cycle of birth and death. It's not about reaching a heavenly paradise with golden gates, it's about transcending existence altogether, becoming one with the infinite. Sounds profound, right? But here's the catch. Most people miss it. The light is too intense, too unfamiliar, and fear kicks in. You might feel overwhelmed, confused, or simply not ready to let go of life, your family, your dreams, your unfinished business. The book warns that if you turn away, you're thrust into the next stage, and the journey gets a lot more complicated. Let's pause to consider what this means. The Chikabardo is fleeting, maybe just seconds, but it's your first test in the afterlife. The book's advice is to stay calm, recognize the light as your own true nature, and merge with it. It's like standing at the edge of a cosmic cliff with the chance to leap into freedom. But human nature makes it tough. We cling to what's familiar even when it's gone. The book says this moment requires preparation, mental clarity built through meditation, self-awareness, and letting go of attachments in life. If you've trained your mind to be present, to face the unknown without fear, you're more likely to embrace the light. If not, you're swept into the Chonyadbardo, where things get wilder and more intense. This idea of preparation isn't just spiritual, it's practical. And we'll come back to it later when we talk about how to apply the book's wisdom today. Now let's enter the Chonyadbardo, the second stage, where the journey takes a surreal turn. This is like a cosmic dream sequence filled with vivid visions of deities. First, you encounter the peaceful deities, radiant figures glowing with compassion, like Buddhas or serene guides. They're beautiful, almost hypnotic, with gentle faces and soft light that feels like love itself. The book says there are 42 of these peaceful deities, each representing a different aspect of enlightenment. Wisdom, compassion, clarity. They're not gods judging you, they're projections of your own mind. reflecting your hopes, your desires, maybe your idealized self. The challenge is to recognize them as illusions and not get attached. It's like seeing a beautiful mirage in the desert. You don't run toward it, you just observe it and keep moving. After the peaceful deities come the wrathful ones, and they're not here to hold your hand. Picture fierce, multi-armed figures with flaming eyes, wielding weapons like swords or thunderbolts, radiating terror. The book describes 58 wrathful deities, each more intimidating than the last. Skulls around their necks, flames bursting from their bodies, voices like thunder. These are your fears, your anger, your unresolved baggage, dressed up in cosmic form. They're not evil, they're still you, just the darker parts. Guilt over past mistakes, resentment towards someone who hurt you, fear of failure or death. The book's advice is brutal but clear. Don't run, don't fight, just see them for what they are. Illusions created by your mind. Staying calm here is like trying to stay cool in the middle of a nightmare, but it's critical. If you panic or cling to these visions, you lose your clarity and get swept deeper into the Bardo. Let's linger on the Bardo because it's the heart of the book's teachings. These deities aren't random, they're deeply personal. The peaceful ones might reflect your happiest memories, like the warmth of a parent's hug, a moment of pure joy, or a time you felt truly at peace. The wrathful ones, they're your darkest fears. Maybe the time you failed a big project, the betrayal that still stings, or the nagging guilt over something you can't undo. The book says the key is mindfulness. Recognize these visions as projections, not reality. It's like watching a movie where you're both the star and the audience. You don't jump into the screen, you just observe. If you can stay calm, you move closer to liberation. If you get caught up in the drama, you're pulled into the next stage where the stakes get even higher. This stage is a mental endurance test, and the book's your coach, urging you to keep your cool no matter how intense it gets. Finally, you reach the Sidpardo, the Bardo of becoming. This is where your consciousness starts getting pulled toward rebirth. You might see glimpses of your next life, maybe a family in a bustling city, a quiet village, or a specific moment, like a child's laughter or a crowded street. Your karma, the sum of your actions and intentions from your life, acts like a magnet, drawing you toward a new body. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says you have some choice here, but it's not easy. If you're not mindful, you'll be sucked into the first appealing option, like a moth to a flame. Maybe you're drawn to a life that looks familiar or exciting, but it might not be the best path. Perhaps it's a life of struggle or unfulfilled potential. The book's advice is to stay aware, choose wisely, and if you're truly advanced, aim for liberation to skip rebirth altogether. The Sidpardo is like standing at a cosmic crossroads. The book describes it as a chaotic, almost disorienting stage where your consciousness is buffeted by karmic winds, the momentum of your past actions. You might feel pulled in multiple directions, tempted by visions of pleasure or familiarity. The book says to resist impulsive choices and focus on clarity. For example, you might see a vision of a wealthy family and feel drawn to it. But the book warns that wealth doesn't guarantee happiness. It could lead to a life of greed or emptiness. Or you might see a humble life and shy away, but it could offer peace and growth. The goal is to choose a path that aligns with wisdom and compassion, or better yet, to transcend the cycle entirely. This stage requires the mental discipline you've built in life, through meditation, self-reflection, or letting go of attachments. This whole Bardo journey sounds like a psychedelic fever dream, but it's really about mastering your mind under the most extreme conditions. Think about it. Life is full of chaos, stressful jobs, broken relationships, big decisions, and how you handle it depends on how clear you can stay. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is training you for that chaos, whether it's in the afterlife or right here in 2025. It's not just about death, it's about living with intention, facing the unknown with courage, and making choices that align with your deepest values. But before we get too deep into the spiritual side, let's hit pause and ask, does this ancient text hold up to modern science? Can a book from the 8th century really tell us what happens when we die? Or is it just poetic storytelling dressed up as truth? Let's put it under the microscope and see what 2025 science has to say about death, consciousness, and the Bardo. Science and the Tibetan Book of the Dead don't exactly speak the same language, but there's some surprising overlap that makes you pause. Let's start with near-death experiences, or NDEs, which are the closest thing we have to first-hand accounts of what happens when we die. People who've come back from clinical death, when their heart stops and brain activity flatlines, often report vivid experiences, tunnels of light, overwhelming peace, meetings with beings or deceased loved ones, even a sense of floating above their bodies. That blinding white light in the Chikabardo? It's eerily similar to what NDE survivors describe. Dr. Sam Parnia at NYU Langone has been studying this for decades. His AWARE study, published in 2014, found that the brain can remain active for up to 30 minutes after clinical death, sometimes longer. That's enough time for your mind to conjure vivid, dreamlike states, which could explain the Bardo's visions. Another researcher, Dr. Rick Strassman, points to DMT, a naturally occurring chemical in the brain, as a possible culprit. DMT is a powerful psychedelic, and Strassman's studies in the 1990s showed it can trigger intense, otherworldly experiences, visions of beings, bright lights, even a sense of transcendence. Could DMT be behind the Bardo's deities and lights? It's a compelling theory. When the brain is stressed, like during death, it might release a flood of DMT, creating a psychedelic state that feels like a journey. Add in oxygen deprivation, which can cause hallucinations, or carbon dioxide buildup, which alters perception, and you've got a recipe for the kind of vivid imagery the book describes. The temporal lobe, a part of the brain linked to spiritual experiences, also lights up during seizures or deep meditation, mimicking the Bardo's visions. So maybe the Tibetan Book of the Dead is capturing a biological process, not a spiritual one. But science doesn't stop at brain chemistry. Some researchers are exploring whether consciousness could exist beyond the body. And this is where things get wild. Quantum consciousness theories, like those proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, suggest the mind might operate at a quantum level, potentially persisting after death. Their Orcher theory, orchestrated objective reduction, posits that quantum processes in the brain's microtubules could link consciousness to the universe's fundamental fabric. It's not mainstream science, and it's controversial, but it opens the door to the idea that consciousness could navigate a post-death state, like the Bardo. For example, Penrose argues that quantum effects might allow consciousness to exist independently of the brain, at least briefly. It's not proof of the Bardo, but it's a tantalizing parallel to the book's claim that your mind continues after death, facing choices and visions. On the flip side, skeptics have a strong case. There's no hard evidence for an afterlife or rebirth, and the Bardo's visions could be explained by biology alone. Neuroscientist Susan Blackmore, a prominent NDE researcher, argues that these experiences are just the brain's last gasps, creating illusions as it shuts down. Oxygen deprivation can cause tunnel vision. Literally, your visual cortex narrows, creating the tunnel of light effect. DMT or other chemicals could account for the vivid imagery, and the brain's attempt to make sense of dying could weave it all into a narrative of deities or cosmic journeys. The temporal lobe's role in spiritual experiences adds weight to this. During seizures, people report mystical visions, and deep meditation can trigger similar states. So, is the Bardo a real journey, or just your neurons firing their final fireworks? Science leans toward the latter, but leaves room for mystery, especially when you consider how little we know about consciousness. Let's dive deeper into the science, because it's worth exploring the nuances. NDEs are surprisingly common. Studies estimate 10 to 20% of people who survive cardiac arrest report some kind of experience. Dr. Parnia's AWARE-2 study, updated in 2023, documented cases where patients recall details from their surroundings during clinical death, like conversations in the operating room, suggesting consciousness might linger longer than we think. These cases are rare, but they challenge the idea that consciousness dies with the brain. On the other hand, skeptics like Blackmore point out that memory is tricky. People might reconstruct these memories after waking up, influenced by cultural expectations or stories they've heard. For example, Westerners often report tunnels or angels, while people in Buddhist cultures might see deities, like those in the Bardo. This suggests the brain might be shaping the experience based on your beliefs, not revealing a universal truth. Then there's the question of rebirth, a core part of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Science has little to say here. There's no empirical evidence for reincarnation, and most researchers dismiss it as untestable. But there are intriguing anecdotes like the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson, who studied children claiming past life memories. He documented thousands of cases, some with uncanny details, but his work is controversial, often criticized for bias or lack of rigor. Still, it keeps the door open to speculation, even if it's a long shot. The quantum consciousness angle is equally speculative. Penrose and Hameroff's theory is fascinating, but it's not widely accepted. Critics say it's too far-fetched to link quantum mechanics to consciousness. So, while science offers tantalizing parallels to the Bardo, it's far from confirming the book's claims. The truth lies in a gray zone, where biology, mystery, and human experience collide. Now, let's ground this in real human stories, because the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just theory, it resonates with people who've come face to face with death. First, meet Sarah, a 42-year-old nurse from Ohio. In 2020, she flatlined during heart surgery for 3 minutes. She describes floating above her body, watching the doctor's work, before being enveloped by a radiant light that felt like pure love. It wasn't just bright, it was alive, like it knew her, radiating warmth and peace. She felt no fear, only a sense of being home. But something pulled her back. Maybe her 2 kids, maybe her unfinished life. Sarah's not a Buddhist, but after a friend gave her the Tibetan Book of the Dead, she was stunned. The book's description of the Chikabardo's clear light matched her experience almost exactly. She says it gave her a framework to process what happened, turning a terrifying moment into something meaningful. Sarah now meditates to stay connected to that sense of peace, and she's less afraid of death. Next there's Raj, a 35-year-old software engineer from Bangalore, India. In 2022, he was in a coma for a week after a car accident. Raj had studied the Tibetan Book of the Dead as part of his meditation practice, drawn to its focus on mindfulness. During his coma, he saw vivid visions, calm, glowing figures that felt like guides, followed by terrifying, shadowy ones with angry faces, like the peaceful and wrathful deities of the Bardo. He says his mindfulness training helped him stay calm, observing the visions without getting lost in them. It was like lucid dreaming, he explains, where he knew he was in a dream but could still navigate it. The book's teachings gave him an anchor, a way to stay grounded in the chaos. When Raj woke up, he was forever changed. He now meditates daily, convinced the Bardo is real, or at least a powerful metaphor for the mind's resilience under pressure. Then there's Maria, a 50-year-old data analyst from California, and a self-proclaimed skeptic. In 2019, she nearly drowned while surfing off Santa Cruz. During those moments underwater, she saw a tunnel of light pulling her forward, with an overwhelming urge to go toward it. She felt calm, almost detached, like she was watching herself from a distance. Then a lifeguard pulled her back to shore and she snapped back to reality. Maria used to laugh at spiritual stuff. She was all about data, logic, and facts. But this experience shook her worldview. After reading about the Bardo, she saw parallels to the Sidpardo, where you're drawn toward rebirth. She's still not sure what she believes. Maybe it was just her brain starving for oxygen. But she's open to the idea that there's more to death than biology. Maria now journals to process her thoughts, inspired by the book's call to face illusions with clarity. Let's add another story, Aisha, a 38-year-old teacher from London. In 2023, she had an NDE during a severe allergic reaction that stopped her heart for 2 minutes. She describes leaving her body and entering a space filled with vibrant colors and figures, some gentle, like kind mentors offering wisdom, others menacing, like shadows of her worst fears. She felt like she was being tested, like she had to stay calm to move forward. Aisha had never heard of the Tibetan Book of the Dead before, but when a friend introduced her to it, she was stunned. The book's description of the Chikabardo, peaceful and wrathful deities as projections of the mind, matched her experience almost exactly. Aisha now uses meditation to process her fears, inspired by the book's call to recognize illusions. Her story shows how the book's ideas can resonate even with those who stumble upon it by chance. Another perspective comes from James, a 45-year-old firefighter from Sydney, Australia. In 2021, he was caught in a collapsing building during a rescue operation and lost consciousness. Doctors later said he was clinically dead for 4 minutes. James describes a sensation of floating in a vast glowing void, where he saw figures that felt both familiar and alien, some calm, some threatening. He felt an urge to choose a path, like he was being pulled towards something new. The book's Sidpardo, with its visions of rebirth, felt like a mirror to his experience when he read it later. James isn't religious, but he says the book helped him make sense of the chaos he felt. He now practices gratitude daily, a habit he credits to the book's emphasis on letting go of attachments. His story adds another layer to how the Bardo's ideas connect to real-life experiences. Finally, let's hear from Li, a 30-year-old artist from Beijing. In 2024, she had an NDE during a severe illness that landed her in the ICU. She describes a dreamlike state where she saw radiant beings offering her peace, followed by darker figures that seemed to judge her. She felt torn between surrendering to the peace and fighting the fear. Li grew up in a secular family, but a Buddhist friend shared the Tibetan Book of the Dead with her during recovery. The parallels to the Chikabardo were uncanny, she says, especially the idea that these figures were projections of her own mind. Li now incorporates mindfulness into her art, creating pieces that explore impermanence and clarity. Her story, like the others, doesn't prove the Bardo's existence, but it shows how its teachings resonate across cultures and beliefs, offering a framework for processing profound experiences. These 6 stories, Sarah, Raj, Maria, Aisha, James, and Li, aren't scientific evidence, but they're powerful. They show how the Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks to something universal in the human experience. Whether you're a nurse in Ohio, a firefighter in Sydney, or an artist in Beijing, the light, the deities, the pull towards something new, these echo the book's stages in ways that make you wonder, is there something to this? Are these people glimpsing the Bardo, or is it just their brains making sense of death's edge? The book doesn't demand belief, it offers a map, a way to navigate the mystery. But before we get too caught up in the stories, let's step into the skeptic's corner and ask, is this all nonsense? Does a 1,200-year-old text have any place in our science-driven world? Or is it just ancient mythology dressed up as truth? Skeptics have a strong case, and it's worth hearing them out. The Tibetan Book of the Dead makes bold claims, deities, rebirth, a conscious journey after death, that don't exactly align with 2025's scientific worldview. Let's break it down. The Bardo's visions sound like hallucinations, and science has plausible explanations. Oxygen deprivation, common during clinical death, can cause tunnel vision. Literally, your visual cortex narrows, creating that tunnel of light effect. DMT, the psychedelic chemical we mentioned earlier, could explain the vivid imagery of deities or cosmic landscapes. Dr. Rick Strassman's studies showed that DMT can trigger experiences eerily similar to the Bardo's descriptions: beings, lights, a sense of transcendence. Add in carbon dioxide buildup or temporal lobe activity, and you've got a recipe for the kind of dreamlike states the book describes. From a materialist perspective, there's no need for an afterlife, just a brain doing its best to cope with shutdown. Then there's the question of rebirth. The Tibetan Book of the Dead assumes a cycle of reincarnation, but science sees no evidence for it. Dr. Ian Stevenson's work on past life memories in children is intriguing, cases where kids recall details of lives they couldn't know, but it's heavily criticized for methodological flaws, like leading questions or cultural bias. Most scientists dismiss reincarnation as untestable, a belief rooted in faith, not data. The book's cultural context also raises questions. It's steeped in Tibetan Buddhism, a worldview shaped by 8th century Tibet's spiritual and social realities. Deities and karmic cycles made sense in that context, but in 2025, with brain scans and quantum physics, they can feel like relics of a pre-scientific age. Skeptics argue the book is a cultural artifact, a way for ancient people to grapple with death's mystery, not a literal guide to the afterlife. But here's the other side. Even if the Bardo isn't literally real, the Tibetan Book of the Dead has psychological value that's hard to dismiss. Its call to stay calm, face fears, and let go of attachments aligns with modern psychology in surprising ways. Take mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, which studies show reduces anxiety and improves emotional regulation. MBCT teaches you to observe your thoughts without getting swept away. And sound familiar? It's exactly what the book advises for navigating the Bardo's visions. The deities, peaceful or wrathful, are like symbols of your inner world, hopes, fears, regrets. Facing them in meditation or therapy is straight out of today's mental health playbook. Cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, helps you challenge negative thought patterns, much like recognizing the Bardo's illusions. Even the idea of letting go of attachments echoes modern psychology's focus on detachment, like letting go of toxic relationships or material obsessions. Let's dig into this psychological angle, because it's where the book's wisdom shines, even for skeptics. Neuroplasticity studies show that regular meditation strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles decision-making and emotional regulation. That's exactly what you need to navigate the Bardo's chaos, or a stressful day, in 2025. The book's advice to face fears head-on aligns with exposure therapy, where you confront phobias in a controlled way. For example, if you're afraid of public speaking, therapists might have you practice in small doses, much like facing the Bardo's wrathful deities. The emphasis on mindfulness, staying present without clinging to thoughts, is backed by decades of research. A 2018 meta-analysis in The Lancet found that mindfulness reduces stress and improves mental health across cultures. So while skeptics might dismiss the Bardo as mythology, its principles are grounded in science, offering tools to handle life's chaos with clarity and resilience. Now let's bring this into 2025, because the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't stuck in a Himalayan monastery. It's alive and well in our hyper-modern world. People are using its ideas in ways that would blow Padmasambhava's mind. Mindfulness apps like Insight Timer, Headspace, or Calm are teaching millions to stay present, echoing the book's call for awareness in the Bardo. These apps use guided meditations, breathing exercises, and even AI-driven mood tracking to help you build mental clarity. Sound familiar? It's the same discipline the book demands for navigating the afterlife. Therapists are using its principles to help clients confront fears and traumas, like facing the wrathful deities. For example, mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, is used in hospitals to help patients cope with chronic pain or anxiety, drawing on the same focus on presence and non-attachment. Tech startups are taking it further. Virtual reality experiences are being developed to simulate Bardo-like journeys, letting users face intense mental states in a controlled setting. Imagine putting on a VR headset and navigating a dreamlike world filled with glowing figures that represent your fears or desires. It's like a high-tech Chonyad Bardo. Companies like Sias and Limbix are already using VR for therapy, helping people confront phobias or PTSD. And some are experimenting with spiritual simulations inspired by texts like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Even artificial intelligence is getting in on the act. AI-driven meditation apps analyze your voice or heart rate to tailor practices, helping you stay calm under pressure. These tools are making the book's wisdom accessible to anyone with a smartphone or a laptop. No monastery required. Pop culture's jumping on the bandwagon too. Movies like The Matrix, Inception, or Cloud Atlas play with the idea of reality as an illusion, a core theme of the Bardo. The Matrix has Neo waking up to the truth behind the illusion, much like recognizing the Bardo's deities as projections. Inception explores dream worlds where you must stay aware to navigate Sound like the Chikabardo? Books like David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas weave stories of rebirth and interconnected lives, echoing the Sidpardo's pull toward new lives. Musicians are in on it too. Tool's lyrics dive into consciousness and transcendence. Florence Plus the Machine sings about shaking off inner demons, and even Billie Eilish touches on themes of mortality and self-awareness. In 2025, we're obsessed with mastering our minds. Stress, anxiety, and information overload are at all-time high. The book's call to stay calm and aware resonates in a world of constant notifications, social media noise, and 24/7 news cycles. Social media is another place where the Bardo's ideas are sneaking in. Influencers on platforms like Instagram or TikTok, without even knowing it, are channeling the book when they talk about mindfulness, letting go of toxic habits or finding inner peace. Posts about living in the moment or releasing what doesn't serve you are everywhere, and they echo the book's call to stay present and detach from illusions. Even wellness trends like gratitude journaling or digital detoxes align with the book's teachings. In 2025, we're grappling with a world that feels like a Bardo, chaotic, overwhelming, full of distractions. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is relevant because it's not just about death. It's about navigating the chaos of being human. Whether you're facing the afterlife, a mental health struggle, or a packed inbox on a Monday morning. Let's talk practical takeaways, because the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just about what happens after you die. It's about how to live better right now. Whether you believe in the Bardo or think it's just a cool story, its wisdom can change how you approach life in 2025. Let's break it down into actionable steps, grounded in the book's teachings but tailored for today's world. First, meditate daily. You don't need to be a monk. Just 5 to 10 minutes can make a difference. Sit quietly, focus on your breath, and notice your thoughts without chasing them. Apps like Calm or Headspace can guide you, offering sessions as short as 3 minutes. Meditation builds mental clarity, like training for the Bardo's chaos. Studies show it reduces stress and improves focus, making you better equipped for life's challenges. Second, journal your fears. Write down what scares you. Losing your job, failing a big project, being alone. Be specific. What's the worst-case scenario? Naming your fears takes away their power, just like recognizing the Bardo's wrathful deities as illusions. A 2019 study in psychological science found that writing about fears reduces anxiety by externalizing them. Try it once a week and you'll feel lighter. Third, practice gratitude. Every day list 3 things that make you happy. A good meal, a friend's laugh, a sunny day. It sounds cheesy, but it shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have, helping you let go of attachments, as the book advises. Research from UC Berkeley shows gratitude boosts mental health and resilience. Fourth, seek support. If you've got unresolved baggage, trauma, regrets, or old wounds, talk to a therapist. Online platforms like BetterHelp or Talkspace make it easy, with sessions you can do from home. The book says facing your fears in life prepares you for the Bardo, and therapy is a modern way to do that. Fifth, simplify your life. Declutter your space. Donate clothes you don't wear. Clear out digital junk like old emails. Cut toxic habits like doom scrolling or obsessing over social media likes. The book's call to let go of attachments isn't just spiritual, it's practical. A 2022 study in environment and behavior found that clutter increases stress, so simplifying your surroundings can calm your mind. Sixth, practice mindfulness in daily moments. When you're eating, focus on the taste. When you're walking, notice the ground under your feet. These micro-practices build the awareness the book demands for the Bardo. Let's zoom out and think about what this means. Life in 2025 is its own kind of Bardo. Chaotic, uncertain, full of distractions. We're navigating new tech, global challenges, personal struggles, all while trying to stay grounded. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches us to stay awake in that chaos, to make choices with clarity instead of reacting on autopilot. Imagine facing a tough decision, a career change, a relationship issue, with the same calm the book demands in the afterlife. That's the real power here. It's not about waiting for death. It's about living with intention, facing fears with courage, and letting go of what holds you back. The book's wisdom is universal, whether you're spiritual, skeptical, or somewhere in between. It's a call to be present, to be brave, to be you, fully and unapologetically. As we wrap up, let's reflect. The Tibetan Book of the Dead doesn't have all the answers, nobody does, but it gives us a framework to face the unknown with courage and clarity. Whether the Bardo is a literal journey or a metaphor for life's chaos, its message is profound. Stay awake, let go, choose wisely. In 2025, that's a lesson we can all use, whether we're facing death, a tough day, or the big questions that keep us up at night. Maybe the Bardo is real, a cosmic journey waiting after death. Maybe it's just a story to help us make sense of the mystery. Either way, it challenges us to be better, braver, more present. So, what do you think happens when we die? Is the Bardo a cosmic truth, a psychological tool, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to keep this conversation going. Thanks for joining me on this 50-minute journey. No BS, just the truth as we know it.